The most challenging part of the team leader role for me was coming in as an STL and having to take over a team at mid-year. No matter what the reasoning is for a team leader leaving, whether it's they leave on their own accord or whether they get dismissed, there's always going to be obstacles and challenges and problems that you're going to have to face coming in as a new team leader. The team's already bonded and formed together. You're going to be the new person and you're going to expect to lead them. They're going to have bad habits. They're going to have good habits. There's no easy way to do it, but you find a way and you just take it one day at a time, one problem at a time, and slowly things will get easier.
For me, the most challenging part of the team leader role was really defining the balance of being in a supervisor role of the team leader, but also being their friend and like living and working with your team 24/7. So it's just a fine line, and kind of finding that balance is a challenge, and I think it's something that you continue to develop as you go.
The most challenging aspect, I would say, is getting people to consistently be on time. I think, at least from my experience, my team had a hard time understanding that if you had to be somewhere at 8 a.m., that means 8 a.m. on the dot, because a lot of people are expecting us to do work. In addition to that, I would say it was very difficult to rely on other people, so putting trust into other people to get things done on time was a difficulty for me, but just giving them that freedom and trying to work with them as much as possible.
The most challenging part for me was going to sleep in the same room with members who are overwhelmingly upset with you and decisions that you've made. But it works out. You find other things that can motivate you. You find ways to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and if you can make that your biggest strength, you're golden.
The most challenging part for me was dealing with internal conflicts within the team. Honestly, it's something that happens in any leadership role, and depending upon your team, you'll find ways to get through those conflicts, and honestly just reach out to your unit leader if you get stuck, because they are always there for you.
I think that would be embracing cultural differences, because nobody grew up exactly like you did, and so somebody may do something you're like, whoa, that's completely inappropriate, but that's how that person, that's how they were raised or whatever. And so just embracing that and understanding people, that's staff, team leaders, and core members, and taking it for what it is and learning someone's background and who they are and why they do what they do. It's not always easy, because you're always going to have in your mind, that's not right, that's not how you do it. But just taking that moment to say, okay, I understand that this is how you are, and I don't always have to accept it or agree with it, but I get where you're coming from. And so embrace that.
All the hats that you have to wear, in a sense of you're never just a team leader. You're either a liaison between your team and the sponsor and the unit leaders, or you're a friend, you're half the time like you're their mom, you're a peer, and you're also their boss, but you also live with them. And just balancing all the different hats that you wear is unique, but very, very challenging.
The most challenging part of being a TL is the isolation when you're out on spike, because it very much can turn into a one versus everyone dichotomy at times, and even when you make the right decision, it'll feel like you've made the wrong decision because everyone's mad at you and you don't really have like a support person there to go to.
I think the most challenging part was just the basic things, getting the same question every day, or the same person asking the same question over and over again when it's 2 messages up in the group chat, or just small things like that. And then also the line between friendship and leadership. Your team becomes your family, and so it's really hard to find that line about where you're at. Usually a boss, you're their boss only at work, and then they can go home and you still see them as a boss. But here, they're your boss, they're your friend, they're your family. It's all of it at once, so finding that line is a lot harder in AmeriCorps.
The most challenging part of being a team leader for me was dealing with the constant questions. And I didn't mind the good questions of like, how do I do this, or can you please explain this to me more? It was, Matt, it says on our schedule there's a mandatory training. Do I have to go to that? Matt, the PPE we've been using on this project for the past 3 weeks, do we still have to wear that tomorrow? Matt, what time are we leaving? And it's just those things that you think that your members would start to pick up, that they'd be able to start thinking for themselves. And I don't know if that was, I enabled them by always answering those questions, or if they just weren't picking it up. But for me, that was the most taxing part of, I've explained myself, you should know this by now, but you're just not getting it. That was the hardest part for me.
Definitely balancing all the different roles that we have. You have to balance budget, and then you have to be a team builder for your team. You have to be a supervisor. You have to work with your site supervisor and sponsor. So trying to balance all of that and still trying to be a person yourself and enjoy your time in the program.
Deciding who you're going to be and which hat to wear in every situation. You got to switch between being a TL and being an actual human being. And so that was pretty challenging. Yeah.
The most challenging part was discipline, but also being the member's conscience and teaching them right for wrong when I was still trying to figure that out for myself.
For me personally, coming back from being a core member straight into the TL role was letting go of that perspective and learning how to come into my own as a confident leader. There's a lot of expectations that were developed based on last year, and it was a challenge for me to separate those two experiences, and difficult to accept and realize my role as a team leader.
For me, it was like all the paperwork we had to do, because there is a ton of paperwork and you have to make sure it gets in at the right deadline, that there's these hour sheets, and then there's also this tracking log, and then there's this other thing. And I think the other major thing is that being responsible for other people, like, it's kind of like, I guess, being an RA, except you're focusing on your personal life too. So you gotta like keep track of everything you do. And it's also true of even people that aren't on your team. You still have to, even members not on your team, you still have to hold them accountable, which is, I think, one of the hardest things to do, because they have to, like, members should understand that it's not just their team leader they have to follow. They have to follow like every team leader and make sure that they're on the optimal.
Well, for me personally, I started off as the Maple support team leader, and so the most challenging thing for me was transitioning into a field team leader. Specifically for me, it was going into a team that had already established their team dynamics.